Okay, do not do it. Don't do it. I know that you want to, but don't do it. Okay, so trying to strip and repaint the stair railing and banister has been a long process, but I will give you the pros and cons of doing that. And also I will give a step-by-step of what I did, because I feel like there are a lot of videos and each one has pieces but doesn't kind of cover it all. Okay, so for pros, obviously there are quite a few things. It will be cheaper because you don't have to pay like any labor costs. And if you do it yourself, you can also be pickier about what you want done. Generally, if you give a contractor an order, they're going to do what you ask them, but you can't necessarily come in constantly and be like, no, just kidding, even though you've stained half of it black, I'd really like for you to not do that. As you're going, you can switch it up if you want without having to pay a giant amount more for them to kind of redo it. So another pro is if you do it yourself, you can also be more detailed and you can keep track of how it's done and kind of how messy it gets. Another big pro, obviously, is that you learn a skill. So if you ever want to do this again in the future, you can. But you probably won't want to do this again. You probably won't. I'm just warning you. Okay, so that brings us to cons. Cons. Yeah, it takes forever. And when I say this, I'm going to add another bullet point because it takes forever. No matter how long you think it's going to take longer. I can't explain. It's really weird. So another con is that you might get halfway through and decide that you just want to hire someone because you don't want to continue with the process and maybe it's stressing you out or you don't have time. If you've gotten halfway through removing the paint, then it might be a little bit less expensive, but either way, it's one of those things that might come up. All right, here we are, a few technical difficulties later. You know, it happens, okay? It happens. Okay, so the next con is that the whole process does take a bit of muscle and yet also some finesse. You're going to have to put muscle into like scraping the paint up. It's just kind of hard, even if you're using something that really kind of melts it off. But then also you're going to have to go in and do a little bit of picking, and yeah, it just takes a lot of detail, and that part's kind of a slow process, so it really requires both. The next thing on the list is that you never know what you'll find. Everybody's stairs are different. That's something that I really noticed from watching a whole lot of different videos. People kind of skip over the messy bits in between because a lot of people, I notice, their railing or whatever it's called, spindle, goes directly into the step and ours doesn't do that. And then some people had spindles that were made out of metal, so obviously they were in a completely different situation. Another huge con is that the removal process, it's a trap, okay? It's a trap. And the reason that I say this is because no one thing seems to work across every surface and every type of situation. It depends a lot on the paint, and that you might be able to kind of test or check, but then you really don't know what the surface you're painting on is actually made out of, which is why I said you never know what you'll find, because the base part that runs under our spindles was not made from a material that I thought it would be made from. And I think that's why the process of getting the paint off of it was so ridiculously hard.
I started with a Wagner heat gun. I mostly just needed gloves for this process and a little bit more safety gear, and I let the paint heat up really hot so I could just scrape it off. The heat gun was most efficient on the spindle part of the stairs. Next, I used Citristrip. It's very thick and is good when covered in plastic, but I had to be careful not to let it over dry. With 2 good applications of 4 hours covered in plastic, it did a pretty good job on the handrail.
Okay, so It was getting close to Thanksgiving. I just needed the project done really, really fast at this point, and I was not making progress on the flat surface. So I found this other chemical stripper, and it melted the flat surface like butter, okay? Literally. Smooth like butter. It was great. Yeah, so just thank you to Jason at Lowe's for showing us this awesome stripper. Now, it was chemically harsh. He definitely warned about that. It is chemically harsh and it smells bad and it really requires ventilation. Ventilation is a must. So, yeah, I mean, that's just something to keep in mind. Also, gloves and all of the safety gear and things like that. One weird thing about it was, even though I started this during a heat wave, there was like a cold wave, and it really doesn't like temperatures below 65 degrees, which is obviously hard with all of the windows open. Like, it kind of wanted to stop working once it got too cold, but obviously it probably wouldn't be safe to use if it was really hot. So there's just a very narrow area where you can use it, but it did really well on the detail areas and finally helped me get the last pieces off. One thing that was weird was that it didn't work that well on the handrail, which is, like I said, yeah, different things work on different surfaces. Now, in terms of the smell, actually using afterwash really did help. I just kind of wiped everything down with it and then the smell started to clear out. Now, I really didn't think I would be this person. I saw people online doing it, but there I was with a toothpick trying to get paint out of the detail areas. So I did actually find a toothpick to be helpful. Some people used a toothbrush. I felt like that just moved stuff around but didn't get it off. Some people use sanding for the whole process. I don't think that's practical. I just use sanding for the last step, unless you have a professional sander, but that's like a whole different situation. But yes, I did feel that using the steel wool on the kind of white haze that was left behind after using the chemically harsh stripper, it was doing a good job of really getting that white haze off. And then I went behind that and just kind of did hand sanding because I don't have a professional sander. So I felt like that worked the best. So after finishing railing 2, I do plan on painting and staining my stair railings, but as I was saying, in terms of having the ability to change my mind, I had purchased an like ebony stain for the handrail and the base. However, one, I really don't want to cover up the handrail because it's beautiful and I really like seeing the grain, and I feel like staining over it with ebony will just, you know, once the stain's there, I can't really get it off. And also the whole base rail or the whole base plate thing is not made out of like regular wood and does not stain the way that regular wood stains. So I don't know, I feel like stain will just kind of look weird on it. And so I feel like it has to be painted. But on the bright side, now I can go with like lighter colors, more of like a French country style, which I am very excited for. Also, if you wanted details from my heat gun video, I did go into more detail on the heat gun in that video, so feel free to check it out. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.